Hello, hello, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is MK, and in today's episode, we're not going to dive into anything too heavy, but we are going to discuss the SPX, what it did, which was basically kind of what we suggested that it may do in yesterday's video. Obviously, there were some decent earning reports that came out today, and there was some positive price action from the SPX, which of course drug Bitcoin around. Bitcoin was a little volatile today, had a decent little top, had a pretty low little spike to the bottom, but ultimately, it's been positive price action. We're going to discuss kind of what we're looking for to stay positive with that in this video. Bitcoin, a few charts that I've been watching, show you a few positions that I've actually been DCing into, as far as a few coins I'm watching. And if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe. And let's go. It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Alright, what a better place to start than the SPX or the S&P 500. This is the 4-hour chart. Now, we discussed in yesterday's video that we closed just below this resistance of where we previously had a double bottom. So this was flipped as support back here before we pushed higher. And then recently, it actually double topped if you zoom in, and that led to this pullback right here after it lost that level, tested it as resistance, and pushed lower. So we were looking for the earning reports to come out today that we discussed in yesterday's video to dictate which direction the SPX was going to go, which ultimately would drag Bitcoin the direction that it was going to go. And we did have a pretty bullish day. And we even closed pretty good. Now, Walmart didn't have the best earning reports, but some of the other companies that came out today, especially Home Depot, had some very good earning reports. In fact, for the quarter, it was one of their best, or maybe even was their best. I can't remember exactly, but I just know that it was good. So overall, those earning reports definitely helped, if anything. We discussed yesterday that until we saw those come out, we wouldn't really have an edge on knowing what direction the SPX would go, but we did know there would definitely be a move or a reaction to those reports. And so what we're looking at now is we were able to break above that resistance, which yesterday on my chart I had as an orange line. I've now switched it to green just to I always like to think of the lower, anytime we pass a level of resistance, I like to look at it as green. Hopefully we can flip it to support. Anything that's overhead, I usually turn red or orange. Just kind of depends. I'm not real consistent with any of that, to be honest with you. But what we're looking for now, as I'd mentioned in my trading group as well, that if we do push higher, ultimately over the next couple of days, the bigger zone that I'm looking at, which would be way tougher to get through than any of the zones that we went through so far, would be this area up here that I've marked in red with the line, and I've put these yellow arrows, right? Because if you look here, this area was support back here. It was support 3 different times along here, each time leading to a bounce, right? This last one, pretty big bounce. And then even here, it was a short-term bounce, right? And then eventually it lost that level. It's even retested it as resistance. And then just below that, we have these little yellow lines that mark another area, which we're just below to start tomorrow. So the question is, do we start tomorrow, get a pullback, and can we flip this green area that was a double bottom back here as support? That would be good to see. I don't mind the idea of us getting rejected to start the day. That's actually not very much of a rejection anyways. Right now we're sitting at about 40,088. That support level is roughly around 4,066. I mean, it's only a 20-point drop. What we'd be looking for at that point is some sort of a double bottom, or that would definitely be obviously a higher low than what we've seen over the last few days again. And then at that point, we can hope to make our run up to that level of resistance. Now, if we push up there the first time without having the pullback, that's great too. But ultimately, I expect some sort of a rejection at this level. And obviously, depending on market sentiment over the next 24 to 48 hours, that could also be the short-term top, and at that point, maybe Bitcoin decides to go back down and test 29K, 28K, some of those lower, levels again, and ultimately see if we can put on another higher low. But that's kind of what I'm looking for over the next 24 hours is when the SPX opens tomorrow. Definitely at some time over the next couple of days, I do expect us to at least push up and test that zone. If you want to write it down and keep an eye on it or set an alert, it's around 4170. My alert, actually I don't have an alert set, so I guess while we're talking about it, I'm going to set one around 4160 just to kind of alert me to be cautious, maybe close any long positions I have open. And I've just been kind of DCing into some positions today, which I will discuss with you here in a minute. In fact, let's go ahead and move on to that now. Now, we will briefly discuss or quickly discuss Bitcoin on the lower term time frames, just kind of what I'm watching as of right now. Though this is a super messy chart. Typically, when I share charts in my Telegram group, again, I will leave a link in the description if you'd like to join our group, see some of our trade callouts or some of the charts that we post, etc. But typically, I will clean the chart up a little bit, obviously, so it's not so messy. But I did post this chart just a little while ago in group and just said one of my only concerns with price action right now, ultimately, is that it looks like it's making a rounded top. Like, essentially, now this is something you can do on any chart. If you hit Alt-I, that'll inverse your chart. Now, if you're looking at it from this direction, obviously, this looks like a nice, bullish structure, right? It's kind of starting to round out to form. It's putting in a series of, low, higher, low, right? And so, that's one way sometimes to help keep yourself from having a bias, is just to flip your chart around and think, hey, does this look bullish or bearish? Because our minds tend, especially if you're someone that trades naturally long, or when you first get into this market, everybody kind of does. You come into this market to make money, and the easiest way when you first come in, or at least depending on the timing, of course, but most people come into this market because they hear, hey, Bitcoin's going to go to the moon, buy it, or this altcoin's going to go to the moon, buy it, right? And so your mind starts out from the get-go biased towards the upside. So that's why I like to flip charts upside down sometimes, just to kind of look at them from a different perspective and allow my brain to go, hey, that does actually look bullish from this direction, which again, if we flip back up the correct way, it's basically putting in a series of highs, lower highs, right? So that is a concern. I did also post in my group that I would like to see us close the daily candle above 30,200. We're flirting with that area right now. We've got a little over an hour left, about an hour and a half almost, before the daily candle closes. And the reason why I chose that area is I just want market sentiment to remain positive. Obviously, today was pretty volatile. You had last night where it broke above this area, went as high as 30,000, like almost 800, 30,750 up here actually. Ultimately came down and double topped. Today, as the stock market's open and we're pretty bullish, of course, that's what led to that move actually. But at any rate, during the day, it had this giant spike to the downside, so I'm sure that scared some people. But ultimately, it did put in a higher low. But now the question is, can this next high be higher than this double top? Because if not, there's a good chance if we lose this support again, bearish retest, then this was just a little short-term bull trap to kind of get everybody excited, and then ultimately you could expect us to at least go back down and test just under 30K at 29.8, or possibly even put in a lower low somewhere back down here, at around 29,000. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. Now, one thing I like to do in my Telegram group is I like to be very transparent with what I'm doing. Obviously, I don't post every single trade that I open because some are higher risk. Because ultimately it comes down to your risk tolerance. But I do like to mention, hey, if I've posted a chart at least that I expect people to look at and consider entering based on my analysis, and if I enter one of those trades that I've posted a chart and group about, of course I'm going to be transparent about it. So I'd like to do that with you guys as well, kind of going forward on the channel. Now, I am DCAing potentially into some low leverage positions. Now, leverage is not something I recommend. In fact, if these were coins you were interested in opening trades on, I would just use spot. In fact, the majority of my trading account is in spot. I only have a small percentage of my trading account over here in the futures section. And if you notice on these positions, I'm only using, and I don't know if you're new to leverage, just ignore this altogether. You don't want to jump into crypto or stocks trading in general, starting out with futures, and leverage trading, because that's how people get wrecked. But at any rate, one thing I did want to point out, if you do dabble a little bit with futures or leverage trading, is that one thing I've learned at least is that you can't get rich overnight, obviously. And some people do, of course. That's more of a gambling, and luck comes into play. I've never had good luck my whole life, so I don't like to gamble. So if you notice over here, I'm using very low leverage. Most of them are 2x. This is like, with margin on KuCoin, it kind of takes all your positions and averages them together, kind of a thing. So this one's 1.99, this is 2.01, but ultimately if you were to average these out, it's probably about a 1.85x, which means I'm using less than 2x leverage, which gives me the flexibility that if the coin literally tanked, it has to tank 50% for me to get liquidated, which can happen. Again, anything can happen. Now, as soon as I finish this video, I'm going to go through and set stop losses. That's something else I always put in place. I'm just not expecting some insane dip over the next 10 or 15 minutes, so I'm okay with, doing that as soon as I finish this video. But I just want to be very transparent with you guys. These are a couple of the coins I'm watching. I've mentioned a few of them in recent videos, not TLM, but I've mentioned Rune, I've mentioned Kava. Well, I just haven't mentioned Kava. Let's hop over to the Kava chart. This is what I had posted in group yesterday. I don't think I mentioned it on YouTube yet. It's just basically an ascending triangle, essentially. I had this red zone as an aggressive breakout entry, and that's essentially where I entered. I didn't quite get the perfect bottom. Again, I'm DCAing in. This is where I intend to put my stop loss back down here at around 218, and I may bump that up actually a little bit. That was where when I posted the chart in group yesterday, that was if I could have got right on this exact entry. I didn't get it, but at this point, we'll keep an eye on Bitcoin. I may bump that up. But anyway, that's the chart kind of zoomed in. And then I also posted a different chart in group that was a little more zoomed out. Just kind of showing the bigger upper end targets if Bitcoin were to remain bullish over the next few days. Here's a TLM chart if you want to pause the screen and take a look at this. Now I did mention yesterday, I think I did. I'm pretty sure I mentioned Alice. If I didn't, I might be confusing what I've put on my Telegram group with what I've shown you guys. So if that's the case, I apologize. But this was a chart I posted in group yesterday for Alice, just saying it was in this nice ascending triangle. It also has some news if we go over to this chart. Sometime later this summer, sometime in the next month or so, they're actually releasing their full game. And often you'll see price action, positive price action leading up to that event. And so that was kind of the zoomed out chart, but the zoomed in chart, I was just saying, hey, buy the breakout essentially and retest of this ascending triangle. I did mention that the 200 MAs would act as resistance, and and so far that's been playing out pretty well. And then this TLM chart that I posted over here today in group just said, hey, keep an eye on this chart. It looks exactly like Alice before Alice broke out. Now, as we all know, Bitcoin will ultimately decide the directions these goes, but these are just some of the coins that I've been watching. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention before I sign out for the day is just a word of caution, and this is tied to my reasoning behind why I wanted to see the daily candle close above 30,200 for bullish sentiment. What we really need to see is a higher high, like I mentioned previously. We need a higher high than this, because if this plays out over time, this rounded top, let's say we break down, bearish retest, break down, bearish retest. If we end up down here at some point, we bounce, that's going to be great as far as, hey, we at least put in maybe a higher low or whatever it may be. But ultimately, this could start forming a head and shoulders pattern, which is kind of a topping pattern, right? A short-term top pattern. You'd have this left shoulder, this large rounded top, which would ultimately be the head. And then if this started to trend back up, if it came down here and say retested somewhere around 29 to 29.2, 29,200, sure, that'd be great for a short-term bounce. But, then at that point, you'd be looking for it to ultimately top potentially at one of these upper resistance levels that it had lost. And then, we know that when that comes back down, now you've completed your right shoulder. You'd have a neckline somewhere down here. And the target for that, not that this would be a crazy drop. The target for it would be somewhere back down around 28K. But, obviously you wouldn't want to be stuck in these long positions if Bitcoin ultimately is going to break down. So we're kind of on the waiting fence at the moment, and I think just like today, tomorrow's SPX price movement will determine what Bitcoin does over the next 24 hours. So we'll be watching closely for a move. Now, I'm sure you guys are getting burned out of me shilling my Telegram group. The main reason that I am is if you're going to follow my channel, I would definitely recommend joining that group, and I will leave the link in the description. And the reason being is we're at a point in the market right now where most of the trades, in fact, all the trades that I make or am making actively are short-term trades. Like, it's really hard right now to hold on to anything either direction. If anything, you'd want to be DCing into potential shorts, or at least you should have, a few weeks back or whatever. But now, we're showing signs of a short-term bottom, but at the same time, we haven't put any major swing highs in to put in higher highs. So at the end of the day, any trade that we're making is sometimes just a 30-minute, hour-long trade. So it's hard to talk about those on YouTube because, again, like I've mentioned in the last couple videos, it's not going to be relevant anymore by the time it's being viewed by the viewers, right? And I don't want to mention coins I'm watching, have some of you decide to go buy them, and then 2 weeks from now, Bitcoin's back at 26K, and you're like, well, this guy's an idiot. Which I am an idiot, but nonetheless, I'm just trying to look out for you guys. So, join the group if you're interested in following what we're doing. And that way, you can see, and you don't even have to take our trades, but at least then you can kind of see our strategy when the market is choppy like it is right now. And with that, I will sign out. If you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe. We'll catch you tomorrow. It's TAwithMMK.